So next up, we've got the Pinot Noir, the Clonal selection. This is from only Elgin grapes. As you can see, the blue label is signifying that it's just from the Elgin surrounds. Again, the vineyards are pictured on the back. A lot fewer than we have for previous wine or other wines we make, the Chardonnay, for example, or Syrah. But this is a wine that was only released later. So when we started in 2012, we focused on the Chardonnay and Syrah, and then in 2015 we released our first Pinot. And up to date, we've been working on different growers and blocks and little parcels, and also different clonal selections for making this Pinot. So it's an evolution and work in progress. Today we've got the 2018, and it's made from 3 different clones, from 115 and 777. Those are the predominant 2. They make up about 40% of each, so 80% in total. And then we use a little bit of 113, apologies, there's 4 clones, and a bit of 667 as well. They gave a little bit more structure and a little bit more extract, etc., into the wine. But going through what the wine is made is that we utilize these different blocks all around from, as I mentioned, Elgin. But importantly, the different clones, when we pick, we actually make the wines in a slightly different style than we have in the previous years. So, as I've mentioned, with other wines, we make a natural wine. It's all it's with natural spontaneous yeasts. We don't use any fining, we don't use any filtration, we don't add enzymes or acid. We try and avoid all of those. But when we make the wines, what we try and aim for is we use something called délestage. It's a technique that, unlike punch down, which is a little more extractive and I've used in the past, délestage allows us to drain the juice from the entirety of the tank to the point where you're actually getting the cake to crumble inside the tank and release further, more pressy pomace juices, and allowing it to settle in a separate tank allows the wine to remove itself of any sort of vegetal or phenolic or not good flavors, which settle at the bottom of the separate tank. And then what we do is we can then put that wine back in it, pump it in, and it fills the tank up without it being too extractive. So unlike pump over, which is another way of removing wine, it's not being jetted onto the top of the cake. It's actually being just slowly pumped gently onto the wine, or onto the cake in this case, so it fills back up again. It also means that the cap turns completely, because one of the biggest challenges with Pinot Noir is that the cap, and in that matter other red wines, is the top of the cap can become a little more volatile than the bottom of the cap, because it's clearly not always wet. And unfortunately, volatility is something that Pinot Noir, as the grape suggests, Pinot Noir is much more susceptible to. If you can imagine, Pinot Noir is a very light style of wine. It's not got lots of extracts, and it's not got lots of other. It's like a coat almost. It's a very thin veil of a beautiful dress, say, but it's very easy to, or very quick to damage and tear. Unlike, say, a more robust wine, which can take a little bit more knocks. Pinot shows those damages quite quickly. So in this case, this is something we want to avoid with the volatility. So that's why we do the délestage. Moving on to the taste of the wine, you can see it's clearly a very light colour, which is as to be expected. We don't have as many acetylated colour enzymes in colour components in the wine itself, and on the flavour profile, you get clearly that very typical ripe kind of Bing cherry or sort of red plum character that you would get. Sometimes a little bit of strawberry here. I'm getting a little bit more wild strawberry perhaps as well. And then of course these very aromatic sort of delicate notes, which I think really are quite intense in 2018. On the palate, it's got a sandy, gentle tannin, which is a very soft, not very aggressive, but enough aggression to allow the wine to age for a few more years. So at this point, the primary fruit is relying on that tannin to give it balance, and that will soften as the wine becomes more evolved and the tannin sort of resolve further. And then undercut, and importantly with the Elgin wines, undercut by a beautiful acidity. That blade of acidity just keeps the wine from falling over, and it keeps that fruit just on a nice little perch to travel for the next few years. Interestingly for me with Pinot, and this is something that we've started to really find in the 18, is some of those secondary components, those slightly other, a little bit of oak or vanilla coming in, but it's very gentle. but other characters, a little bit of earthy notes as well, which will actually hopefully increase with time to give a bit more complexity. Because what we don't want is a single-dimensional style of Pinot, which is all just strawberries and cream. We want something a little bit more complex that also will have the opportunity to gain further characters with age.